If you have a stud that breaks off and is sticking up, which was one of your questions, most people found the answer, but they just said stud remover and stud, they say pusher and puller or something, I think is the two answers that 90% of the class put. This is a cam style. This is a cam style stud puller. It's designed when you stick it over the stud and you rotate it with basically a ratchet or a breaker bar. This cams over, pinches the stud between in the hole, and then when you keep rotating it, removes it. So this is one way to remove it without damaging it. So the secret on that question was without damaging it. And I had people say use a punch and a chisel, that would have damaged it. Use a torch, that would have damaged it. So this doesn't damage it. The other style is the collet style, where you thread it over, and then the two pieces tighten together. It basically grips on the threads, and then you take it out with a wrench. One of the questions on there, if you have a bolt with a 3/4 inch head on it, what size, or
yeah, I got that.
with a 3/4 inch, what was the question?
10, number 10. What size is a bolt that a 3/4?
What size is the bolt that has a head that's 3/4? And I'd say most of the class said it was a 1/2 inch.
That's what the book said.
Standard, commonly it is, but here's two bolts that have the same size threads, but have a different size head. And so the real answer, just to be consistent, I marked it wrong on everyone that said that. The reason why I did it is because you can't determine the size of a bolt by the size of the head.
You're just watching in the book.
Okay. So the answer is you can't determine it by the size of the head.
Which number?
I think it's 10. Here's an example of why that's true. I don't know. The last question was, name a tool that you wanted to see that you have never seen before, wanted to see demonstrated. And I had like 6 people put down a feeler gauge. And that tells me one of two things. You guys must really want to see what a feeler gauge is, so I'll show it to you. Or 5 or 6 of you copied the same paper and never read the questions, so you just copied what the last person said. I don't know. I'm going to presume that you want to know what a feeler gauge looks like. Here's a feeler gauge. Here's 3 different types of feeler gauges. This one here is curved. There's a lot of times where you're trying to check clearances and you can't go in straight. You've got to reach down around something. So they have curved ones. This one here is straight. It has a lot of different sizes in it. It's a wow thing. It measures the thickness, or the clearance actually, not the thickness. Like valve clearance or bearings, spark plug. This one here is for spark plugs. They tend to see the wires. You can either use a flat bar for spark plugs or the wire. The reason why different people recommend wires is because as the spark plug wears, it'll get a little notch in it, and the wire will actually fit over that notch. If you use a flat blade to check your spark plugs, when you measure it, you're actually measuring the highest points, and there may be a cavity in there that can throw it off. So your gap may actually be wider than you check with the flat blade.
What about one of the discs?
The disc things are very handy, and I use it all the time. But there is a difference between a flat blade and the wire, and it has to do with that groove that gets worn. If you have a new spark plug, there will be no groove. So the disc thing works perfect, and the flat blade works perfect. It's only if I'm trying to salvage a used spark plug that the wire is going to actually be more accurate. So that's the difference between the wire ones, the disc ones, and the flat bladed ones. In there's a question on, when I get done using a torque wrench, what am I supposed to do? No. What you want to do, I got a bunch of people got it right, is always set it to its lowest reading. Don't screw this thing all the way as far as it goes, and don't leave it cranked up. The fastest way to destroy this precision instrument is to leave it up on 50, 60, 80 pounds and leave it there. There's a spring in here, and when you crank this thing up, it stretches the spring. If you leave it like that, it actually will throw the calibration off. So as soon as you're done, always back it off to the lowest setting, whatever it is. If this one here, this one starts at 50, so I'm going to back it off to 50, and then I lock it. So that's what you do, and then wipe it off before you put it away. So clean it, and the biggest thing is putting it back on the lowest setting.